This is Audible.
HarperCollins presents The Ballad of Falling Dragons by Sarah A. Parker. Read by Sarah Mullo Christensen, Phaedra Alcasey, Heather Firth, Caitlin Kelly, Corvin King, and Alexander Sendies. A note before we begin. Don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider. It contains a glossary, pronunciation guide, map, and family tree. A note before we begin. Don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider, which contains a glossary, pronunciation guide, map, and family tree. For my lovely Nana, I will always need you. This book contains explicit content and dark elements that may be triggering for some. This includes blood and gore, death and violence, sexually explicit content, torture, implied threat of sexual assault, explicit language, cruelty toward a creature, the abuse and death of an animal, the implied abduction/trafficking of minors, occurs off-page, and traumatic birth. Please listen with caution. It was unnaturally quiet that day. The loft a sheet of tempered glass that offered only the sharpest reflection. Not a breath of wind ruffled the grass or squealed past honed corners, the volcanoes that blistered Gondar quelling their grumbled ruckus for the first time in many phases. Not a single rock rolled out of place unless ordered to, the action swift and without strain. Even the clouds refused to weep, like a crumbled face holding breath before the anguished sob. It was as though Ignos, Boulder, Claude, and Rain had pooled their consciousnesses elsewhere, as though they'd been watching, listening. Folk mulled over the strange occurrence, and those who could hear the creator's songs would later speak of it as a bad omen, given what was to unfold that day. That the large silver moon-plume moon perched in the sky above the shade was about to wobble from its lofty perch. First came a scream from the mouth of someone buckled with too much pain and loneliness, like bursting a seam that had been sewn too tight. Then came the words, tilled from a thirsty heart, without much thought beyond hope of easing the ache in the female's chest. What happened next had the creators screaming with equal might, their voices hitched with foreboding. Then, Slatra pitched from the sky like a luminous egg, plummeting with such velocity that fire plumed in her bouldered wake. Those who witnessed the event and lived to tell the tale would later say the ground around them seemed to heave a sigh of acceptance. Right before the moon struck with such force, the entire world rattled for a beat, like a shudder. Fitting, given the event would later bring about a reckoning that was well overdue. The creators watched as a female, hatched from that moon, stumbled free of the beautiful, luminous wreckage with eyes a crush of glitter and ink, blood leaking from a bone-deep gash in her head. As she tore toward Erythia with vicious intent, before she was captured, subdued, tossed in a cell beneath a mountain that housed a male who frothed with bloodlust, watched as she was tortured, hardened, sharpened. They knew the end began here, amidst this echo of something that took place so many phases ago, that the male this moon-fallen fae once loved roamed the plains with a heart full of ache and a mouth full of words that could crumble the world to dust, that he could end things faster and with more ferocity than any moonfall. That fate was working against them to make things right, herding them into a corner too small and suffocating. They didn't fight, for they knew they were in the wrong, knew that if they did, they would lose. For the day they laid their little trap and tore Kalis to shreds, packing him into a cage that crushed him into a screaming mulch, there was but one thing they hadn't counted on, something bearing a potent strength that would forever go unmatched. Love.
Chapter 1.
Come on. I feel around the cold, calcified ridges of a jagged hole in Slatra's side, a particularly sharp edge nicking the tip of my finger. Pain barely registers, the sensation akin to the song of a lost friend, treasured almost. Many of the scars on my hands attributed to this beautiful silver moon. To her. With slow steps, I move farther around the bundled moon plume to another hole. This one so deep, I can fit my entire arm in and only just feel the back. Something I check for the 1,000th time, making sure the shape is clear before I move on to the next. Imagining I have the missing pieces in my hands, setting them back in place. Not a want. Not a simple desire to finish the job, like completing a complex puzzle, but a soul-deep urge that's propelled me since she pitched from the sky, pervading my dreams and every waking breath even after I found Rave, beaten and bloody in that cell. I press my palm flat between Slatra's closed eyes. You will be whole again, I rasp. Throat so tight I have to clear it. I put my head against hers despite the bitter cold that bites my skin. I swear on my existence, I will not rest until I've found every last piece and brought them back to you. She doesn't move, doesn't open her eyes and reveal her secrets. Certainly doesn't fill this jagged hole in my own chest, like something's out of place. A feeling I've grown too familiar with over the many phases since Eluin left. I look down into the smooth hollow that cradled her before she hatched as Rave, and a different sort of hurt flares in my too soft heart. Impossible to ignore. My thoughts drift to her whereabouts, to how Lyri howled and howled once she seemed to realize Rave was gone. That Rave had left her here in the burn, had chosen to chase revenge on her own, to step away from love. I felt every high-pitched bay through the fibers of my being. Still do, whenever I step foot in that cavern, or let Raigun's thoughts filter through me from where he's nesting at the mouth of it. Though the small moon plume seems to be howling less now, like she's giving up. Somehow that's worse. I press a kiss between Slatra's eyes and make for the stairs, brushing the frost from my beard as I step from the frigid ebb of her silver light, up toward reality. Pushing past leafy vines, I exit into the balmy air grown heavy from the storm, now rumbling in the distance, past sodden blooms dripping into puddles. As I reach the door to my suite, the sound of flapping parchment wings draws my attention skyward. I offer my hand for the approaching lark to settle on, my heart lurching with the realization that it could be from Rave. Perhaps a note telling me she cares for me, but that she won't be coming back. Something she couldn't bring herself to tell me to my face. Not a breath moves through me until I flatten the lark and read the message from start to end, written in the native tongue of the clans. Not from Rave. Relief floods me like a guzzle of icy water. I reread the message from Teros, valuing the update on his journey to Bothaim with Rek saddled behind him, being flown toward his imminent demise. Happy to hear of their progress, I refold the lark and pocket it. Weather permitting, they should land in Bothaim in 2 or 3 cycles. Rave will be waiting, no doubt, ready to skin wreck alive, hopefully make him beg for death before the end. Hopefully shed the blood-lusting itch from her veins. Shoving the thought down, I lurch the door wide and push past the curtains. Make sure they're pinched shut before I move deeper into the suite, brushing my fingers over my lute. Frowning, I pause to lift it from the rack, settle it against my hip, and drag my thumb across the frayed strings. The tenor that strums free boots me in the chest, strained and with a strident overtone, an echo of the hurt that's been strung through me since Elwyn left so many phases ago. The tune of my heartache, of my love and sorrow. I should have replaced the strings long ago, but that would change the sound. Something that didn't feel right, especially since she's the only one I've played for since Slatra carried her into the sky. A private tune to her spirit in the hopes it would hail her heart back to me. Perhaps I should have played harder. Clearing my throat, I set the instrument on its rack and unstopper my chalice of burnt brandy, pouring a drink. I sip, the liquor blazing a path into my gut as I open the small table drawer and retrieve the glass vial I stuffed within over 30 cycles ago. A pang of guilt strikes me at the sight of the whirling mists inside, like it's caging a small tornado. Oops. I sink into the leather armchair and take another swig, put the glass aside, then set the vial on the table and pop the cork. Borg pours out in a gush of grumbling mist, turning and spreading as he gathers size. He folds over himself, then stretches larger than a pallet-sized throw, almost completely transparent, before constricting into a dense, wafting mass again. Just bigger than me, black eyes gleaming with rage? No. Disappointment. That's worse. The absent king returns, the disgruntled waif mutters, floating before me like a pale storm cloud tethered to his vial. Borg, I've missed you too. Your actions contradict. He extends his mouth long ways, a messy hollow torn through. Next time you think to stuff me in a drawer, don't. I dip my chin, hand fisted against my chest. You're right, my friend. That was thoughtless. Please accept my humble apologies. Depends. Another stretch of his mouth, sideways this time. Did you find me a prettier jar? Shit. Still working on it. Lies. He gusts forward so fast the hairs on my arms lift. Over 100 faces and I'm still in the same ugly thing, plugged in place with a cork. I arch a brow. It has a large window. Pointless when I'm tossed in a drawer like an afterthought. A small smile pulls at my lips. Fair point. Borg sniffs long and deep, getting right up close to my mouth, like he's about to thread in there and invade my organs. Never fails to make a shiver climb my spine. I smell the drink on your breath. Indeed. You've come to feed me? I reach for my glass and bring it to my lips, forcing him to retreat enough for me to take another blazing sip. Depends, I hiss, past clenched teeth, playing the usual game. He offers me a gaping grin, then wafts back, pretending to pick mist from beneath his foggy fingernails. I still haven't heard from your Elwyn, nor have the others, though a well-fed brother in Gore recently came across a fae who had spirits clamoring to speak with her. Curiously, some were members of the fallen Nivan family. My heart almost lurches free of my fucking ribcage. For a hefty nibble, Borg continues while my blood boils, gaze still cast on his nails. I could ask my brother to inquire about the messages they were hoping to pass. You will tell your brothers to stop searching for Elwyn's spirit immediately. I growl with such might the room trembles. Hands fisting so tight, a fissure pings through my glass. Or anyone in correlation with her. Borg wafts his hand, flat, against what I imagine is his chest cavity. Like I just wounded him. But you swore to feed me for an eon if I managed to connect with Elwyn's spirit, or I'll tip you back into the mists. Shriveling to the size of a woto, he peers up at me, eyes huge within his trembling body. He doesn't want to go back there. He's much better fed with me. And once we locate the rest of your precious moon shards, he snipes, puffing back to his regular size and posturing over me. What of me then? Will you tip me back into the mists? Or perhaps leave me in a drawer until you grow so old and senile you forget I even exist? His words pinch, softening my regard. I know how it feels to be capped with a cork and tucked in a drawer, hidden away. I still have use of you, Borg, and plenty of painful memories to keep you as overfed as you've been these past 100 phases. Though if I were wise, I mutter, tossing back another swig, I'd trade you for a brother with a sweeter appetite. This time, both his misty hands flatten against his chest. You wouldn't dare. I've been a humble servant. A hungry, sadistic servant. But morbid as it is, this waif knows me almost as well as Rygan does. He's tasted most of my agony, my loss. Every time he brings something painful to the surface, I'm reminded to live each moment with intention, to honor and love with my whole heart, and thus stave off the fester of regret. Mostly. I wouldn't dare, I confirm, meaning every word. You're a loyal ally, and a much treasured friend. Borg deflates, everything bar his puffed chest, and returns to picking mist from beneath his wispy nails. Treasured as I am, I have bad news for us both, given my current state of near starvation. I lift a brow, decide against reminding him it's impossible for him to actually starve. Unfortunately, I have no news to report on the whereabouts of any more of your beloved shards, though the moving mists are migrating farther north than they have in over 100 phases. He splays his fingers to inspect his handiwork. I'm hoping one of my brothers within will spot something soon. I nod, pushing down the pang of disappointment. Good to know. He gets to work on his other hand, coy as he says, Perhaps there's something else you want to know? Hard to ignore the greedy hitch roughening his voice. There is, actually. I'm looking for information on the whereabouts of 3 folk. He surges forward so fast I suck a breath, almost cross-eyed with the effort to maintain his gloomy eye contact. Go on. I take another gulp to forge myself some personal space. My next words hissed. Thea, my sister. Kazari, my niece. And Ron, my alchemist. I've sent them all larks, I say, swirling the liquid in my glass. I'm impatient to hear back. An understatement. The chasm left by Rave's absence is packed with restless anxiety that feels like lightning bolts, forking into all my tender muscle and sinew. I'd let Grim beat me into a pulp just to draw the focus elsewhere. but he's not around. Nobody's around. Ah, let me consult. Borg gusts to a respectable distance, withering into a sheet of mist that drifts across the ground. Take your time, I murmur, then fill my mouth with another gulp, doing my best to numb myself. I've almost emptied the glass when Borg recongeals into his regular shape. I have information on your alchemist, he announces, voice pitched with hungry glee, like a loyal beast that just caught a rodent and dumped it on my pillow. Nothing on the others. Not at this stage, but my brothers are listening. I nod and pour myself another drink that I drain in 3 deep gulps, burning my throat raw. What are you craving this day? Young Khan, he blurts, vibrating with excitement, his fingers clawing at the air like spindly tick legs. Something truly mouth-watering, given you stuffed me in a drawer for so long. Fair, I mutter, thumping my empty glass on the table. Truth be told, it could have been worse. Given the current state of things, reliving any memory from after Elwyn left for Arithia might have kicked me over the edge. I tip my head against the headrest and close my eyes, feeling Borg encroach like a sticky cloud wafting against me, hands patting at my shoulders, neck, then jaw, fingers splaying around my cheeks. He finally finds balance. There's the distant, cyclonic sound of his mouth opening, heaving with intensity until it overshadows the thumping pound of my heart. Then the plunging sensation, like a cold tongue, is slithering down my throat, shoving past my physical layers, through the fibers of my soul. Still, it pushes, finally slitting up into the shape of a hook, fierce enough to flay me from within. I fist a particularly painful memory, nesting in the embers of my volcanic insides, lift it up, and wrestle it onto the hook. Borg hums with glee, dragging it up in steady increments. He's just a youngling. Mommy's voice is so loud and sad, it makes my heart hurt. Please, Ostern, please have mercy. Get her back to the fortress, Poppy growls over his shoulder, his big hand squeezing my arm so tight I think my bone is going to snap as he charges across the courtyard, dragging me behind him. 4 of my fast, scrambling steps for every 2 of his. Guards rush to grab Mommy, despite her big, swollen belly, hauling her back the way we came. She screams my name so loud her voice cracks, cut off as the doors slam shut between us. Poppy's dragon circles overhead, close enough to stir the air, blasting sand into my eyes. I screw up my face, blink really fast, trying to force my tears back down. If I can just stop crying, maybe I'll be allowed to run back to Mommy and make sure she's okay. But the tears won't stop. No matter how hard I try, more keep coming out. We pass from the courtyard under wiggly trees, down some jagged stairs while I scramble to keep up. My legs finally give way. The burning ground grates skin from my knees and hip, leaving a trail of blood, like one of my clay markers smudging across the parchment. I'm chafed raw, stinging all over by the time Poppy lets go of my arm and stands over me like a tower. As I scramble back, my hand falls down the edge of something, making my heart jump. I peek over my shoulder at the hole behind me. like a dark throat waiting to swallow. A warm wetness spreads through my pants. Look at me, Khan. I wipe the tears from my eyes so I can see Puppy clearer. The sun blazing at his back, making him look like an angry shadow. His dark hair is tucked beneath his bronze crown, sitting just above the deep lines crushed between his hard eyes. My gaze drifts to the 3 beads dangling from his ear. Red, brown, clear. My chin wobbles as I look at the orange mug in his fist, shaped with my own hands, and with no help from Balder. Poppy is always telling me to shape this, shape that, shape. But the things I give him are never good enough because my words come out in bits. But I'm good with my hands. I thought maybe if I made him something perfect, he'd be happy. All I wanted was a smile. Why are you crying? Because my heart hurts. Because I worked for days and days on that mug for Poppy, only for him to look at it like he's looking at me now. Like he's disappointed. I wipe more tears from my eyes. I don't know. Is it because I've hurt your feelings? I glance at the mug in his hand, cutting back to Poppy's big brown boots. Easier to look at than his angry face. Your heart is too soft, Khan. Just like your ma's. Just like this mug. He squeezes his fist. Crack! Shards of pottery crumble across the ground like the shattered bits of my heart. I swallow my sob, but it burns going down. Like I just swallowed the sun. I know you think I'm hard on you. Your grandpa was hard on me too. But you forget you're the son of a king, born with shortfalls that could tarnish the Vaegor legacy. The words come out like a dragon's growl. Big and hurting. Poppy crouches, his red riding leathers tight across his wide shoulders as he points at the shards. The time you spent shaping that gift should have been spent on your stutter. Spent shaping yourself into someone worthy of the crown that's been worn by a Vaegor ever since the phase our ancestor first mounted a saber scythe. I study the crown on his head. All those sharp points poking toward the sky. How do I tell him I don't want to be worthy of it? That I just want to be worthy of a hug or a smile of him? His face softens. But then he looks at the 2 beads Mommy's been braiding through my hair since I first heard Ignos and Balder. Though not Claude or Rain like Poppy hoped. His upper lip peels back. Show me something I can be proud of, or you're better off as a servant. He shoves me. Though I'm expecting it, it doesn't stop my belly from dropping so fast I almost spew, falling backward into the dark. I hit the ground so hard my breath stops. My ears ring and my head goes light. I drag in a breath, feeling another hurt in my chest. Like something broke inside me, now digging into important things. I look up at the light above, round and pale like a moon-plume moon. Puppy leans over the edge. His neck muscles strain as he says a phrase I've never been able to get right, no matter how many times he's tossed me in this hole. Balder shudders around me, then chomps shut caging me in a darkness so hot and thick it clogs my throat. But I manage to speak, stuttering a command that only makes Boulder break into bits that slam into my head and almost crush me. I try again. So much dirt and broken stone packing around me that I can barely move. The scared feeling in my chest takes over. I scream, cry, claw at the jagged darkness, beg Boulder to listen to my broken words. Not that any of it helps. Not that it ever does. Because my words don't work properly. Because I'm not a tri-bead like Poppy. Because I'm weak, soft-hearted, useless. Borg stops drinking, loosening his hold on me, like hooking a fish through the guts, then releasing it into the loaf despite the fact that its innards are hanging out. I gasp, eyes wide open as the memory slithers down and coils back amongst my insides, frantically checking my surroundings, reassuring myself that I'm not trapped beneath the ground, trying to stutter free. That I'm in my suite where I'm safe and alone, excluding my gluttonous waif. Borg gusts back with a groan. "Poor, sweet boy," he drudges out, seeping down into a misty cushion of satiated glee. "That was delicious." With trembling hands, I pour myself another half glass I toss back, then slam it on the table. Glad it sufficed, I grit out, leaning forward to knead my eyes. Roan? "My brothers who dwell in Bothame's dungeon have spoken with him." My spine snaps straight. "What do you mean, the fucking dungeon?" "Don't murder the messenger," he drones, far slower than I wish he'd speak. "Roan regrets to inform you that he, and this is a direct quote, messed up and will go on trial before the Tri-Council for allegedly stealing the Book of Void." My heart plummets so fast it makes my head spin. "When?" "3 days," Borg drawls, yawning as he shrinks to a small thread of fog, feeding himself into his vial without another word, leaving me alone with the silence. I stare, mind spinning, unable to waft away the reek of impending war. "Damn it," I mutter, then cork the vial and stand, pocketing Borg. I stalk to my door and yank it open, coming face to face with Pyrock at the threshold. Red hair askew, hand raised in a fist like he was just about to knock. Looking like he rolled off his pallet, then stumbled straight here. I meet his gaze, preparing to break the news that his younger brother is awaiting trial in Bothame when I notice his pale complexion. That and the uncharacteristic panic in his wide green eyes. My gut drops. What is it? A furry Miscun hand comes up to rest on his shoulder, gripping gently. I frown. Lumo? She peeps into view, her pale pink eyes so big within her small face. "Eyes here." She clambers higher, pulling up until she's crouched on Pyrock's shoulder, her colorful smock gathered around her small trembling body as she reaches out her hands. Frowning, I take her in my arms, quick to tuck her against my chest. She bundles her long limbs and nuzzles in. I stroke the pale fur on her face, glancing back at Pyrock. Has she seen something? Yup. He reaches back and scratches his head. There's a moonfall coming. All the breath escapes my lungs.
A bad one,
Lumo murmurs from where her face is hidden amongst the folds of my shirt, her voice barely audible over my thundering pulse.
Lumo's scared.
My heart squeezes, arms tightening with protective urge. Not for the first time, I wish her visions had started when she was a bit older, not fresh from the cold pouch of her slain ma. Seeing such things is hard on anyone, let alone a young pup. Do you know where it'll land, Lumo?
Not one moon.
She snuggles deeper into my chest, like she's seeking comfort.
Many moonses.
Creators. I spare a glance at Pyrock, still scratching the back of his head, his complexion almost green, making it look as though he's about to fold forward and vomit. A quiet conversation passing between us. How many, Lumo? I cup her cheek and rub behind her ear, hoping to bring her comfort. Did you see how many will fall? She peeps up. Eyes brimming with tears, she curls her tufted tail around her head, trapping my hand against her cheek.
Too many.
Chapter 2. Kaisari. Curled atop my straw-stuffed pallet, I stare out across the filthy ground of my small, compressing cell, through bars barely visible in the dull lantern light. Watch a puddle of gathered mildew get attacked by the slow drip, 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 loosening off a stalactite, churning over my interaction with the Scavenger King. What have I done? I should have told him to eat shit and die, rather than race to hide a call to arms amongst the whorls of my signature. If the lark is going where I think it's going, I've implicated someone I love. And for what? Me? I wallow in my mistake, suffocated by the immense weight of the mountain above, realizing what I am. Bait. Plump prey that found refuge in a trap. There can be no other answer. Perhaps the lark won't make it to Khan. Perhaps it's going to paw instead, and my uncle won't be dragged into this. The thought brings little relief. Certainly not enough to lift me off the ground and reinvigorate my hunger to escape this horrible place. I tap my foot against the cold stone, jingling my chain, trying to stimulate my mind, dredge up a single drop of hope or energy to do something, to work this problem over and find a way out, to fight. But the silence has never been so loud, the walls so close, my shackles so tight. Maybe Pa's misgun has worked out where I am. Maybe an army is coming for me, ready to break me free and drag me back to Erythia. A bigger, prettier cell to suffocate within. I groan, then glare at the rusty pan of slop by the bars. The last meal I was dished up. Offal and stale bread garnished with gorging grubs. Perhaps I'll get sick and die before anyone gets here at all. I squeeze my eyes shut, spiraling with the scenario. Picture myself dead in this cell. The diadem cracking free like a tick thirsty for another host, strong enough to contain the ether stone. Except there isn't one. Without a host to feed the ravenous runes, Kalis will be released. Will be whole again, yes, but upon seeing me dead in this cell, he will rage. In my heart, I know he'll rip every the faint sound of fluttering wings before something lands in my palm. I open my eyes. Nay. I frown so deep, the skin around my diadem pinches, studying the 3 scripted letters on the little lark's abdomen, impeccably joined. The handwriting smooth and delicate. Perfect. As it should be, given I took a cane to the knuckles every time my quill slipped even slightly out of line. A royal title stands for naught when your paw condones you to be treated like a coin that's never polished enough. Looking at those letters, it's hard to ignore the heavy lump in my chest. Something that feels a lot like she's learning she's dead all over again. That she bled out giving birth to me. That I'll never know what she smelled like. The tone of her voice. How it would have dipped and peaked when she told me she loved me. Perhaps I've dropped into a state of morbid insanity, and I'm simply imagining the lark's presence. I latch onto the notion like a bloodthirsty parasite, gorging myself, squeezing my eyes shut so hard they ache, determined the lark I whispered to Ma phases ago is not currently belly up in my hand. I open my eyes. Nay. Damn. Perhaps I'm dreaming. Perhaps I dreamt the signature too. I close my eyes again, murmuring to Kaelis, a hollow song that ices my lips until I fall into a half-sleep, drifting somewhere cold and high amongst the stars, somewhere we can hear each other, sing to each other safely, love each other, somewhere Kaelis is whole and not mulched within the stone embedded on my brow. Suri's there, rather than caged in the royal moon-plume burrows hidden beneath Erythia. Something that's always hindered us from exploring the skies as one and forging a sturdy bond. For the first time ever, I feel her presence in my chest, feel her vivid joy for the way her wings cut through the atmosphere. Her pearly hide cold as the air kissing my cheeks. No pesky escorts caging her in like they do whenever we fly together. We roam the endless horizon beneath a glittering carpet of stars, as we were always meant to be. Free. Ma's there too, I think. Maybe I just wish she was. That she could wrap me in her arms and tell me everything's going to be okay. Something nuzzles my neck, nudging me back to my dire, damp, foul-smelling reality. A sour reek that never loses its putrid edge. My heart knots as I recall the lark. I open my eyes, seeing my palm is empty. A dream. My entire body loosens with my shuddered sigh of relief. Though I think it's lovely that some folk like to go around, gathering ghost larks and pinching their return folds. A quiet way of informing the sender that their message wasn't delivered. That's not what I want to believe. That my message wasn't received. Instead, I want to believe that little lark made it to Ma. That she got my note, but hasn't yet been able to respond. That she heard me. My entire body aches with the thought, and I bind my arms around myself, holding tight as I whisper to Kaelis, Havaka nuelgiak, havata quil. I love you. I'm here. No response. My next words crack. Nueljuki tough maruli. You're not alone, but I am. If I had something sharp, I'd cut off my foot and slide the iron shackle free just to hear his voice again. something I didn't consider until this very moment. Guess I'm breaking my promise to myself, withering into a mindless mess. I groan, toss my arms across the floor, and bang my shackle against the ground, over and over, a clanging drum that echoes off my tight confines. Bang! 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 How disappointed Paul would be at my sudden lack of composure. Oh, how he'd scowl. One of those looks that used to make me soil myself before I grew wise enough to keep my mouth shut and behave. Mostly. Bang! 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 My stomach grumbles. Again, I glare at my uneaten meal, trying to mime the will to crawl over there and eat the wretched thing. I'm not stupid. If I'm to find a way to escape this place, I'll need strength, no matter where it comes from. But in the wake of my scribbled signature and the hidden message within, it's hard to look at that rusty pan and the wriggling meal without wanting to projectile vomit across the stones. I look past the bars instead, into the dark tunnel beyond, wondering how many days have passed since I walked too willingly into this trap. Too many. Bang! 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 I roll onto my side and not into myself like a calcifying dragon, arms bound around my back like a sweep of wings. Imagine the embrace is not my own, but that of another, tight enough to squeeze the breath from me. Nuel shuki taf maruli. Something flutters against my neck again. I sigh. Guess another creature made its way in here seeking something warm to nuzzle against. If I have to kill another willow moth so it doesn't lay eggs in my hair, I'll scream. I reach up and cup the fluttery thing, pulling it away. Nay. My heart jolts, a pitching ache I try to ignore. Not a dream. The lock wiggles its tail, and I flick it off my hand, scrambling into a sitting position. They don't usually do that. I stare down at the thing lying sideways on the stone, stained, bloody, a little bent out of shape. Last seen when I blew a name upon its wings with all the foolish hope of someone clinging to the belief that true magic exists. The sort that grants miracles. That I could simply will Ma back into existence, into my arms, if I only tried hard enough. Now here it is, return fold spent, looking just as beat up and hopeless as I feel. Like a mirror I don't want to look at, disappointed in the reflection staring back. I sigh, set the lark aside, and cover it with a small mountain of straw. There. A frosty breeze threads into the cell, sending a chill scuttling over my skin, like clothes taunting me with a breath from the outside world. Repressing the urge to swear at her, I gather my torn and filthy gown around my legs and grip my diadem, pulling. A familiar nausea churns in my gut as my head splits into a screaming ache, like I'm trying to rip thick roots from my skull. Swallowing the saliva gathered beneath my tongue, I try wedging my nails around the diadem's sides, certain there must be a seal I can break, despite not having found one the countless times I've tried in the past, and with tools much fiercer than my jagged fingernails. Warm blood leaks down the side of my nose, dripping into the folds of my dress as I pick, scratch, and gouge, my gaze bouncing from one scribbled letter on the dark gray wall to another. letters that appeared to have been drawn by a youngling learning to write. In this place. I veer from the thought, looking at the ceiling covered in moons all etched in coal. Moons that remind me of. I squeeze my eyes shut and hug my gurgling gut. There's the sound of fluttering wings, and I frown at the little lark taking itself skyward, shedding stalks of the straw pile it somehow escaped. It's tenacious, I'll give it that. It bounces between the sooty moons until it's directly overhead, tilts forward, and plummets, hitting me right between the eyes before tumbling into my lap. Ouch, I mutter, rubbing my head as I stare at the lark. Unmoving, its beak crumpled. Something that bothers me too much. Taking its little face between my fingers, I press its back into shape, noticing a small rip in its wing, like it put up a fight to get here. I wish it hadn't, that it was still out there, fluttering around aimlessly. Free, not down here in this hopeless, lonely hole with me. I set it on my knee and lean my head against the wall, watching. Sigh when it flips onto its back and bares its belly again. Nay. My gaze drifts to its tail, the return fold pinched in place so hard there's the faintest remnant of a bloody fingerprint. I turn the lark around so it's facing the other way, breath catching when I notice a scribble of black that disappears beneath the pleats. Like someone responded before returning it. I stare, swallowing. What could a stranger possibly have to say that wasn't implied by the pinch itself? Something like, "Hey, sorry, this lark has been flying around aimlessly for a while. I'm guessing the receiver has passed. Apologies for your loss." Do I want to read that? Definitely not. I place the lark on the ground and close my eyes, try to sleep. Catch a beak to the face 3 times, perfectly between my eyes. After the 4th, I bundle into a ball on my side, teeth gritted as I listen to the lark flutter skyward, wondering if I should just whip my arm around and bat it so hard it stops moving forever. Why is it taunting me? I wish it would stop. Stop! There's the soft thud of it hitting the ground at my back. Glancing over my shoulder, I see it on its side, motionless, its beak so crunched into its face, it looks as though it has no beak at all. A swarm of guilt stings me from all angles. It just wants to be read, Kaisari. Just read the damn thing and it'll be content. Creators, damn it! Slowly, I unravel, roll, push into a sitting position, and tuck my bedraggled hair behind my ears. I pluck the little lark up and pinch its crinkled beak until it's pressed into place again, then unfold it one slow segment at a time until it's lying flat in my hand. I need you. No, you don't. Wow. I refold the lark until I'm looking right at its beaked face. Is this your idea of a pep talk? It wiggles, flipping onto its back like it wants to be read again. I smile for the first time in a while, shaking my head. How did you get so much personality, huh? Another jiggle. Fine, I murmur, unbinding the lark, reading its message. Familiarity strikes like a slap to the face. My gaze travels past the parchment, up the rough cell wall, like looking down on dark, sandy dunes from the sky. In the smooth dips between veined ridges of stone, I hunt the messy letters scratched deep, bouncing between the lark and the wall, finding undeniable similarities in the Y, the D, The tea. My blood chills. Did a child write this response? The same child who was kept in this cell. Did they get free? The backs of my eyes burn, as does the flame of hope reigniting behind my ribs as I read the message again. No, you don't. This time, it settles in my chest differently. Less like a thorn, more like a gulp of crisp, clean air. They're right. I don't need anyone. I've lived in a cage my entire life. Whenever I hit rock bottom, I always find a way to break free and catch a breath. Desperation forges keys from the most unassuming things. Yes, I messed up by signing that piece of parchment that's probably already fluttering toward Uncle Con. But nothing bad will come of it should I get free and take charge of my mistakes. And according to this, it's possible. I refold the lark, cup it in both hands, and bring it close to my face. I'm sorry I yelled at you, I whisper, then tuck it in the crook of my neck. I rock, side-eyeing my wriggling meal, as a surge of determination sets my heart on fire. I'll find a way to get us out of here. I promise. Even if it means I have to start stomaching that crap.
Chapter 3. Vea. I sprint down the curl of stairs, my steps thumping in unison with the panicked thrash of my heart, thoughts still pinched between the pages of Eluin's diary flush against my ribs, bound in place beneath my thieved bodice, with a length of cloth I ripped from the underlayer of my equally thieved skirt. A bloodlace has arrived on Dragonback this rise. If she's here to test my youngling's blood once I give birth, the paternal line won't draw in Tyroth's direction. It'll draw north, to Con. I stifle a groan, ignoring my strong desire to fold over the ornate obsidian handrail and loosen my gut 7 stories down to the gleaming floor below. Never have I felt the weight of such crushing responsibility, knowing my next actions could bring about a war that might crumble the world. But I can't keep this diary to myself. No. Con deserves to know the truth. So does Elu. Rave. Kaisari deserves it most. Determination stiffens my jaw. Get to the cupboard, get changed, get free of the palace, through the hidden door in the wall, around the forest of weeping wisps, up the mountain path, and into the abandoned burrow where my carter is hiding with Fern, her escort Moltenmaw. Get home, back to Con. Break his fucking heart. Creators, I mutter, taming my pulse. I push my shoulders back, slowing my steps as I move down the flight of stairs that cuts through the atrium, the many windows showcasing the blustery might of a storm now heaving over the city. Full-skirted gardeners crouch over beds of luminous flowers, cutting stems or planting new bulbs, while Claude swats bouts of snow at the panes. My hands fist in my effort not to rush past, not to make a scene or draw attention to myself, pulling steady breaths of air spiced with the zesty scent of shade-borne blooms. A lovely smell that fails to make this place feel like anything other than a pretty ethereal dungeon I hope I don't die within. I move down a tight stairwell, bursting free in the servants' wing well below ground level. My charge through the endless warren of cold obsidian halls is constantly interrupted by thorns and stoic palace workers, forcing me to keep my steps slow. Primped and polished females who swish across the floor like regal sweeps of a broom, each bearing a clipped ear, marking them as a null. A custom Tyroth introduced when he dug his claws into the shade, like a male dragon pissing on its territory, making it stink. Finally coming to a closed cupboard door bracketed by burning sconces, I check both ways, then pull a small vial from my pocket. I uncork the lid, punched by the musky scent of whatever goes into this potent concoction Rowan brews, some sort of excrement based on its pungent aroma. I try not to think about that as I tip it into my palm, then smear the brown puddle across the bulging door handle. The fusing rune I drew earlier sizzles, releasing an angry hiss before it smokes into oblivion. The handle clunks, then turns, unlocking. Pocketing the vial, I dart through and pull the door shut behind me. I fold back against it and release a shuttered sigh. Fuck, I mutter, ripping off my bangle, tempted to toss it at the wall. Instead, I tug a vial of moonlight from my pocket, illuminating the tight store space as my glamour begins to itch, then peels like flaking paper, disintegrating before it hits the ground. I stare past my blanched fingers to the bangle caught in my trembling fist. Should have let the trog eat it. I pocket the stupid thing. My gaze drifts, landing on Ada, still unconscious on the ground with my bundled white cloak tucked beneath her head, her features lax, mouth gagged. I take in her modest gray underwools that look far more comfortable than the suffocating abomination I'm about to redress her in, especially given her condition Tyroth made me aware of. Sighing, I study the gentle swell of her abdomen, barely there. Even so, I'm mad at myself for not noticing, shaking my head as I crouch at her side. I know my brother well, what he's capable of. This is not the place where Ada and her youngling have a flourishing future. This is the place where serpents choke happiness while it sleeps, where young princesses are ripped from their palates in the middle of slumber time, forced on the back of foreign beasts, and flown to a distant city, treated like a lump of bloodstone, like currency. This is the place where new maws die on their bloody birthing sheets, where secrets fester until they're rotten enough to poison the world. Teeth gritted, I lean forward and set the vial of moonlight on a shelf between stacks of polishing cloths, then get to work loosening my bodice, yanking it free with a heaving breath, filling my lungs properly for the first time since I fastened the Creator's damned thing in place. I pull my leathers on before gently unbinding, ungagging, and redressing Ada, just easing my cloak from beneath her head when the hairs on my arms lift. My gaze snaps to her face, straight into bold blue eyes staring at me. My heart drops so fast I almost forget to breathe, half expecting her to open her mouth and scream, to bring my fucking world down with a simple sound. Except she doesn't. There is no fear in her wide eyes, no panic or anger, no confusion, just two probing orbs behind a sheen of tears, leading me to wonder if we shared more than just resemblance while I wore her skin. If part of her soul traveled with me on that heartbreaking journey too. Her gaze drops to where Elowin's diary is bound against my ribs, turning my blood to ice. Guess that answers that. She closes her eyes, a tear slipping free as she lifts a hand, resting it on her abdomen like a shield. "You don't have to kill me," she whispers, lashes lifting. "I won't say anything." I know she won't. Nobody in their right mind could absorb the words in this diary and not choose the moral side of the coin. Tyroth may be the paw of her unborn child, But Elwyn was the Shade's blood-born queen. History notes a postpartum bleed was the reason she never got to see Kaisari grow. But I don't believe that. I doubt Ada does either. The entire fucked-up situation has a taint that sticks to the male who currently holds the obsidian throne. I could never. I reached into the pocket of my cloak, retrieving a hefty pouch of bloodstone, enough to purchase a small tavern in this part of the world. But I must insist you leave, I implore, taking her cool hand to curl her fingers around the pouch. Get out of Arithia. Find somewhere safe, far away from Tyroth Veg. I can't. She untangles her hand from mine, from the pouch. I frown. Can't or won't. A long silence passes as more tears slip free. You should go, she finally whispers, causing a shiver up my spine. Right. I stand, dash my cloak around my shoulders, and flick up the hood, pinching the buttons shut to ensure my leathers are well concealed. Then you will likely end up dead, just like Elwyn, I mutter, tossing the pouch of bloodstone. It lands on the floor with a hefty thud that makes Ada flinch, or perhaps it's my words sinking in. Good. This world is not kind to females, bastards, or those who wear no beads, I continue, passing a pointed glance at the clip in her ear. I grab my vial of moonlight off the shelf and stuff it into my pocket, casting us in darkness. Remember that. I open the door and leave.
Chapter 4. Rave. I swing my arm back, then thrust it up, smashing my fist against the ice that just won't budge. Another punch. Another. Pain shoots through the fine bones and tendons in my hand, up into my elbow, feeding the bloodlusting fury simmering in my chest. I've tried everything. Sharpened my consciousness into a blade that's only bent against the ice. Blunted it into a hammer I used to try to bludgeon my way through, searching the frosty expanse for an area that might be weaker, thinner. Nothing works. I even pretended to drown, hoping my other's protective instincts would lure her back beneath the ice and hopefully crack open a hole for me to climb through. Wrong. She either doesn't care or is perfectly aware my consciousness doesn't require oxygen to exist in this watery tomb of doom. Another strike shreds my knuckles and the remnants of my composure. Fuck! My plan was meticulous. Indulge my ravenous hunger for vengeance on a banquet of carefully plotted torture before I'd finally plug Rex's mouth with his intestines, pinch his nose, and watch him choke to death while reminding him exactly why he's being so brutally ended. For murdering my beautiful, miraculous Essie. For torturing Leary to near death. Until my other stuffed me down here like one of my stones. Like she expects me to bundle up and sink to the bottom while she does who knows what to this spangle shit stain I coaxed into my trap. Wait, is that the answer? Sinking? I whip around and peer down into the gloom. Dark, aside from the speckled light far below, like a squashed star that splattered its effulgent guts everywhere. My eyes narrow, gaze bouncing from luminous speck to luminous speck. Maybe there's something down there I can use to break myself free. An option I wouldn't usually consider, but she's not down there. She's up there, slaughtering, probably feasting on Rex Zaros's flesh. I frown, thinking of all the shit I've tossed beneath the ice. Things I don't particularly want to see again. Ever. But so long as I don't dive too deep, I should be fine. Theoretically. Fuck it. Kicking off the ice, I dive through the crisp water one determined stroke at a time until something long and luminous tangles with my fingers, making me pause. I pull my hand close and turn it over, eyes narrowed on the silver hair that's longer than I am tall. A chill skitters across my skin. I've seen this exact shade in the tomb beneath Khan's sleep suite, seen it in the sky south of the wall, nesting amongst the aurora ribbons that sometimes blend with that wonky moon I love so much. I've seen it in my dreams, and in aching flashes of memory, the luminous tone coupled with milky eyes framed in pale lashes. No, I dump the thought, swish the tendril away, and shove deeper into the unknown. Find an object to bash against the ice, break free, take back control of my body, make Rex's final moments a living slumber terror. The fuck? The distant splatter of light swells, taking on a clustered shape of hexagonal ice pillars poking up from the gloom. Like I'm coasting through the dark above Netherin, the moon plume nesting grounds. Something else I refuse to mull over, refuse to consider too deeply. I propel closer, drawn to a wide pillar at the center of it all, shorter than the others, fenced in by taller ones crouching close. I focus on the concave dip typical of a well-used nesting perch. And within that dip, a large pile of treasures, mainly silver, egg-shaped stones that make my breath hitch, make me want to turn around, propel toward the surface, and wait patiently to be released, then never come back down here again. Perhaps I would do just that, were my fingertips not itching to gouge Rex's eyes from their sockets, then puncture his fucking heart. Snarling, I shoot toward one of the taller columns and shift to the edge, looking into the dark chasms woven between the pillars, hoping to find something helpful, squinting to make out the distant shape of stones. Thousands of stones jammed between the crevices like long-forgotten junk. My stones, each mossy mound belonging to a memory or moment I've tossed away with the intention of never seeing them again. I spot a particularly sharp one I lobbed down while Essie was bundled in my arms, unmoving, lifeless. I flinch, ripping my gaze away. Fuck no, not going down there. Which only leaves one option. Hands fisted, I study the large pile of silver egg-shaped stones covered in luminous moss that sways with the water's churn, frowning when I notice a long, pearly tooth wedged amongst them. From what I can see, it's longer than my foot and likely strong enough to split ice, though it's odd I don't recall tossing it down here. I ignore the part of me that knows I didn't. The part that's piecing together the shards of this strange, shattered puzzle, shaping it into something too big and round and heavy to bear. I kick over the chasm and land on the buffered slope of ice, sliding deep into the massive nest. So large, Rygun could coil up in it, though he'd mostly be hanging off the edges. The angle mellows, and I shift closer, pausing before the mound of treasures almost taller than myself to assess the situation. Unlike my stones, tossed away like trash, these look lovingly shaped, cradled, nurtured. A thought I squash like a bug. I need to move at least one before I can free the tooth. Unfortunate, since tampering with someone's treasure is a sure way to piss them off. Shifting around the pile, I hunt for the best angle. Realize my options are dimmer than the chances I'll be able to deliver my well-planned monologue to an even partially conscious wreck. Do I move the velvet-looking stone that reminds me of a lump of coal, or the blue teardrop-shaped crystal that appears a little easier to reach? Fuck it. No time to dally. I swish away strands of silver moss, shove my hand down the cleft, grip the teardrop, and tug. It comes away, leaking a dulcet sob of song that weeps through the water, words sung from a voice I recognize, laced with mourning so deep it drenches my skin, floods my bloodstream, sloshes against my heart. Shrieking, I toss the crystal with such gusto it arcs through the water, plunging into the crevice while I heave big bouts of icy water into my laden lungs. The slow, sorrowful tune infesting my essence, lodging in my mind, like a seed of sadness I certainly didn't ask for. There's a reason I don't listen to Rain. I don't want to make space for understanding her language. Now some of it's wedged in there like a sordid splinter that'll probably fester. I fucking hate this place. I force down the unwanted thickness in my throat, crack my neck from side to side, and eye the pile before me. Definitely best not to touch the others. Who knows what they'll dislodge. More careful this time, I thread my arm down the gap and grip the smooth ivory saber, giving it a tug. It doesn't budge. I tug again, gritting my teeth as I strain, putting all my rage and frothing thirst for vengeance into the heaving motion. The tooth comes away so suddenly I'm tossed back, a few of the egg-shaped stones shifting with the disruption. One of them brushes against my retreating arm, those mossy tendrils caressing me like the stroke of a moon plume tail, tossing me into a swallow of elsewhere. Somewhere I'm not myself, but something larger, more powerful. Something furious, packed with flexing strength that fans from between my shoulder blades, my chest puffed with a roil of frosty fire threatening to burn a trail up my throat. The other. Past. The other dives into a cloud of fog, releasing a guttural screech that tapers into a squeal sharp enough to slit skin, announcing her rabid intentions to slay the young fae who snuck upon her nesting pillar and took her most precious egg. She may have been sitting on it for too long, since well after her mate was felled and bled into the ground, but she could finally sense life within. Since bestowing it a silver thread of the mystical fiber within herself, life had finally begun to flutter. And now it's gone. She blasts free of the mist as rage erupts up her throat, pouring past her open maw. Azure flame explodes against a tall nesting perch made by another long-past moon plume, crumbling it to pieces and shattering the silence. There will be no rest until the other has the thief clamped between her teeth and she's shaken his heartbeat still. Then she'll feast on his flesh, tear it from his bones strip by strip. Garbed in his blood, she'll wait for his remains to turn solid from the cold, then crunch him into shards. If she can just find him. There's a distant shout, rattling, a series of animalistic squeals that lifts the other's hackles, sending a shudder down her spine. She banks, hunting the sound, plunging through another sheet of mist hiding much of the spawning grounds. "Go away, you horrid beasts!" The other's heart hitches at the shrill voice echoing through the den. "Leave us alone!" The mist dissipates long enough for her to catch sight of an icy overhang, glimpsing a little fae much too young for this part of the world. She should be in a stone nest with the ones who gave her life, wrapped in the furs fae have taken to wearing to protect their fragile skin. Not here, guarding a small snow nest surrounded by doom quills. Prickly predators that are painful to chew on, that rattle and howl and raid dens dug into the snow, their main prey the fresh litters of more vulnerable creatures. The very reason the other often ends up with their spikes embedded in her gums. She observes the youngling's stance, little feet perched wide for battle, her angry yet fearful eyes so blue they could be forged from the flame that brews in the other's chest. "Go away!" she screams, voice trembling. She thrusts a dagger forward, as though trying to make up for her lack of sharp teeth or claws. "Or I'll use it!" The other notices the way her hand shakes, like she's scared, despite her bared teeth and loud, threatening words. Tucking her wings, the other swoops closer, moving as one with the air currents so they don't shriek against her hide. She cuts through more mist, emerging to see the largest of the spiky predators leaping forward with a howl, just as the fae punches her weapon into the creature's smooth underbelly. Dark blood sprays the youngling's face. The creature tips its head and yowls, and something shatters in the young fae's eyes. She sobs as her prey falls to the ground, dead. The rest paw at the snow, wailing, long tongues lashing, their intent obvious. Approach as one, disable, kill. The other's instincts rage, urging her forward, roaring for her to protect. Protect. She folds her wings, tucks them flat against her body, and plunges. Throwing them wide, she swings forward and drops to the ground, the motion kicking up an explosion of snow that buffets her silver hide, disorienting the now screeching, scattering creatures that momentarily forgot they're not at the top of the food chain. The other is. The youngling doesn't scream, doesn't flinch or try to run. She falls to her knees and barricades the opening, her sad eyes still on the beast she felled and the swelling puddle beneath it. The other arches her neck and spins, letting all her rage and sorrow surge from her chest in a blow of blue fury that slaughters everything it swallows. A fitting end for such dishonorable opponents. While mutilating spiked bodies with her flame and violent sweeps of her claws, it occurs to the other that perhaps this small fae doesn't like killing things. That would explain the look in her eyes and the sad sound she made as her weapon slipped from the creature's chest. Seems strange, since many fae don't feel the same when they take life, happily grounding dragons to drain their blood into the ground, preventing them from finding peace amidst the big black, like the other's beloved mate. But that look in the youngling's eyes, it echoes in the other's mind as she continues to blow her flames long after the final beast has fallen, reminded of times past, when dragons yearned to form a bond with one courageous and moral enough to earn it. Not feared such connections. Shaking off the thought, the other bites down on her fire and spins, snarling as she takes in the surrounding mess. Bodies so affected by flame they've exploded into frozen shards now strewn across the snow. Pleased with herself, the other turns back to the snow nest, but the small fae is no longer shielding the entrance. The other stills. A silver light radiates from the opening, spilling beyond, melding with her own. A soft screech wells from the cracking remains of an egg the other coiled around for too many rises and falls. Then comes the gurgle of her hatchling taking breath and working its tiny lungs. Another piece of shell breaks away and falls into the snow, revealing her beautiful silver young, still covered in clear residue, bundled up as though it's nesting in the sky, beginning how it will end, as is the way. It wriggles, lifts its head a little, tries to stretch its wings, causing more shell to push away as a whip of breeze carries its sweet, leathery scent to the other's flared nostrils. Female. A daughter. Her heavy body drops to the ground, wings splaying. A foreign sensation swells in the other's chest, big and warm. As she studies her hatchling's slender neck and the way her head wobbles around, too heavy for the developing muscles, the other nests with the feeling. A form of love she's never experienced, never considered possible. Lazily, the hatchling lifts her lids, and the other's heart squeezes hard at the first glimpse of her eyes, dark and speckled with the many lights of their ancestors. Beautiful. They lock gazes from across the snow, and her young honks. That sensation in the other's chest surges to such a mighty size she worries her ribs might break. A keening sound crawls up her throat. I love you too, sweet one. Her gaze shifts to the male fae tucked on his side within the snow nest, pale hair askew. The same male who raided her nest, though she no longer harbors the desire to swallow him. Not at the sight of his protective posturing, his arm bound around the remnants of her hatchling's egg as he works to remove bits of shell so she can further free herself. Loosening her small, misshapen wing from the sticky membrane that must have gotten too warm and shrunk, cutting off some of the blood supply. I'm sorry, he sobs past pale lips, his words heavy with so much sadness. The other tilts her head to the side. If she could shape his words with her much bigger, more fearsome mouth, she would tell him she doesn't understand. Her young blood hatched. There is no room for sadness, only celebration of life. She's about to creep forward and nuzzle into the nest so she can scent her hatchling properly, when she realizes, where is the little one? The small fae who took life to protect this flimsy nest and the ones tucked within. Hopefully not crushed. Pushing up, the other swings her head beneath her belly, throwing a glance about her claws and down the line of her tail, swishing through the surrounding carnage, until she feels a strange tug on the long tendrils that spawn from her spine. The other goes still. Is that? Something prods against her leg, farther up. Another tug, followed by more clamoring against her hide. Curious, the other swoops her head around to peer at this small fae perched between her shoulder blades, breathing hard, still covered in the blood of her kill. Her pale hands no longer tremble, but are fisted into the other's tendrils, holding on so tight the rapid pulse in her palms patters through the sensitive strands. She looks in the youngling's eyes, lit with so much determination they're luminous. Shweel! Fly? The other huffs. This small, breakable being with fingers too weak to withstand the force of flight wants to ride her into the frigid, unforgiving sky? The other doesn't fly with a mount. Ever. She yields to nobody, especially not one so fragile. Growling, the other shakes, trying to dislodge the young back into the soft snow. Confused when she finds her still clinging to the same tuft of tendrils, cheeks flushed from the fast pump of her little heart. A new fierceness screws up the youngling's features as she bares her teeth and screams, Shweel! For one so little, the word is big, making the silence shudder, like the air goddess is listening. Shweel! 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 Perhaps it's the only way to get her off and make her stop screaming. The other looks at her hatchling, well protected within the arms of the wide-eyed male, and releases a low grating sound. She lifts her wings and thumps them down, propelling into the sky with such force it would rival that of a falling dragon, expecting the little one to slip free and plop upon the snow. Flustered when she doesn't, looking back every few beats to check she's still clinging on. Fascination mounting. The mists swallow them, buffeting the other's wings as she scoops the icy air, soaring higher, thrashing with all her flexing might. The other doesn't want the small fae to plummet to her death. She'll catch her if she comes loose, return her to the ground where she belongs in acknowledgement of the blood she spilled to protect the other's precious egg. But it doesn't matter how hard she beats her wings or how fast she dips or turns, the little one doesn't budge. Not when the ribbons rise, then fall again. Not when a storm sweeps in and batters them from all angles, coating the youngling's dark hair with frost and clumps of snow. Not when the other soars so close to the moons she feels the world's ever-present tug loosening its hold on her, the light of her ancestors drenching her wings, hailing her to curl up and rest with them. Again, the ribbons rise, arching so near that the other wonders if they're going to splash against her like they did so long ago, casting her hide silver. But they don't. They dance just out of reach as the little one begins to sing, a soft song that ebbs and flows with the ribbon's movements, like she's translating their dance into something of such beauty that for a moment the other coasts. Not thrashing, just listening. The song calls to her soul, tugs like her yearning to curl around her egg long after it was due to hatch, to eventually offer it some of the silver essence that filled her with the cosmic song she's finally starting to understand, one final surge of hope. It tugs like her yearning to find an eternal nest amongst the stars. One day. But not this day. Not with her new meaning perched between her wings, clinging with clenched fists, singing even as her lips crack from the cold. It's there, so close to those who've lifted into their final resting place, that the other yields for the first time in her very long existence, and to a youngling smaller than her claw, leans into her welling desire to protect the little Fae with the savage fierceness of one who suddenly has everything to lose. The other tames her thrashing heartbeat until it squeezes in rhythm with her little ones, hearing her gasp when their bond hatches with the ferocity of a bursting star. She doesn't offer her flame, knowing her little one is not ready, that it would break her from the inside out. But she does offer almost everything else. Through the building threads connecting them, the other feels the cold rush of her little one's shock, her warm, blooming wonder, feels the fierce strength of her spirit and the wild love she has for the ones who share her blood. She feels the shape of her moral heart, so big and viciously bold, feels the heavy sadness for her young's crooked hatch, the knowledge of her small, afflicted wing not crippling the other in the same way it has her little one. Fate works in magical ways, and even now those tendrils are plotting, tying knots that may not be understood or loosened until many rises come and go. But the other does know one thing. Her and her precious little one, they were always meant to be. Chapter 6. Rave. The memory rips away, like something just plunged its fist into my soul, grabbed a handful of whatever it could wedge its claws into, and tugged. My heart pounds, mind busting against the jagged bits of everything I consumed. Fingers clenched around the saber, I kick off the pillar of ice, powering toward the surface through a mess of silver threads that tangle around my fingers and arms, throat tight, suddenly desperate for air, racing for the surface, yet drowning beneath that pile of egg-shaped stones. Reaching the barrier, I slam the saber up with such gusto the tip lodges deep into the ice. Hairline cracks web out from the divot as I stab, trying to scrub the stain of everything I just absorbed with each savage strike. Something large and luminous shifts above, the vision of it smudged by the fissured ice. I still, heart in my throat, time stretching. Every hair on my arms and legs lifts. The shape swells, appearing to draw closer. Fuck. The ice implodes with such force I'm caught in a churn of shards, silver threads, and sloshing water, my pulse a bellowing roar. I scramble for the surface, primitively aware of the water's rhythmic displacement. A steady thud-ump, like my others moving through the lake beneath me to the familiar pulse of beating I kick harder, swim faster. Don't dare look down as I bash past sharp bits of ice and charge for the bouldered shore, stumbling over jagged stones, climbing so fast I get a head spin. I don't celebrate my freedom, part of me still caught in that cold, silent elsewhere, still soaring through the endless black with my pulse tied to another. A little girl with a big heart stuffed full of warmth. A realization clambers up my ribs and perches between my shoulder blades, claws puncturing my skin and spine. That silver moon plume chose the blue-eyed, black-haired child because she sensed the goodness within her, because she fiercely protected the ones she loved, rather than running, hiding. A child with such strength, courage, and bravery, who would be so disappointed if she knew what a coward she became.
Chapter 7. Vea. Heart pounding in rhythm with my chattering teeth, I hurry along the steep streets of Arethia, buffeted by bitter wind and pelting snow, wondering if clothed in rain are at war with each other, cursing them for it. I would barely be able to see past my own hand were it not for the bright orbs bobbing overhead like tiny moons, likely suspended by advanced runes I've never seen before. Distantly, I recall hearing a rumor that Tyroth traded a young protege to the Tri-Council in exchange for their eternal favor, prized for his ability to lace runes like nobody else. Guess it's true. Checking over my shoulder to make sure I'm not being followed, I cut around a corner, struck by an icy blow that nips so deep it feels like my face is peeling off. Creators, I chitter, easing deeper into my hood, yet to see a single folk walking the streets, braving the storm, yet to see a single sign of life beyond the odd lit window flickering like starved flames. A full-body shiver runs all the way to my bones. This place is beautiful, skillfully sung, but it feels like a grave. I move faster, jogging down a stairway pinched between tall, pointed buildings sung from obsidian, cursing each burst of blustery air heaved into my parched lungs, cursing the size of this fucking place. An ornamental labyrinth that feels like it's about to fold over itself and chew me up, all its honed structures becoming the tapered teeth of an angry beast. I don't want to be here, caught in wrestling gusts of snow. I want to be home in the hot, humid north, beyond the impending conversations I need to have, chugging hard liquor until I'm blind drunk in some crooked gambling den, pretending the world isn't more fucked up than I'd previously thought. Rounding a corner, I finally come upon the towering black wall that circles Aurithia, almost collapse with a mixture of cold exhaustion and relief. The sound of ruffling feathers almost makes me shit myself, the feeling not helped when I look up and see a massive molten maw roosting on the wall, front claws tucked. I still. It shakes off a crust of gathered snow, revealing a chest bound in saddle straps that offers me a pinch of relief. Not wild. Though its head is dug down in the resting position, its red eyes boldly stare, assessing me with uncomfortable curiosity. I look at the wall beneath its roosting spot, to where a dead weeping wisp is rooted to the stone, its spindly remains a pale sentinel to the only unguarded exit. Given said exit is a secret only revealed by activating hungry runes with a penchant for warm blood. Eyeing the beast above, I dig into my pocket and feel around for the vial of colk blood I stashed there. Slits of sting permeate my numb fingertips. Damn it, I murmur, picking out bloody shards of glass I drop in the snow, remnants of the smashed vial. Unfortunate. I ease my blade free and drag it against my palm. Warmth pools as I clench my fingers around the hurt. Keeping my gaze firmly trained on the curious dragon, I edge closer to the wall, trying to ignore the deep rumble coming from the molten maw's broad chest, a fierce reminder that approaching a bonded dragon without their rider nearby is often seen as a threat. Way I see it, I'm bleeding. Bleeding things are less threatening than non-bleeding things. At least that's what I tell myself as I smear my wet hand across the stone. My blood coagulates into the shape of the previously invisible runes before they begin to hiss and steam. I grit my teeth and brace against the wall, hoping the etchings aren't thirsty enough to put me on my ass and make me look too much like an eager meal. The bloody marks dissolve in unison with my fading equilibrium. 3, 2, 1. Part of the wall slurps into oblivion, leaving an arched exit from this beautiful, soulless tomb. A perfect frame that looks out across the wide chasm to the forest of weeping wisps on the other side. sewn into the steep mountainside, the spindly trees being tossed about by the storm like water weeds caught in a blistery current. I stumble through the opening. The stone claps back into place so fast I'm shoved forward, like it tried to push me down the sheer rocky ridge Orythia spawned from. Hurrat, boulder! I toss my arm back, clasp the rigid hand of stone that punches from the wall and jerks me to a halt, though my heart feels like it busts through my ribs, plummets through the blinding vortex of wind and snow, and impales on a rock somewhere far below. The smooth hand calcifies around my clenched fingers, while I heave breath, trying to reel my heart back into my fucking chest. That was close. Still half hanging over the edge, I look up at the molten maw, unsurprised to see it studying me over its snow-dusted wing, still rumbling, probably hoping Boulder will drop me into the chasm to be snatched like falling prey. I may not be his most devout apostle, but the god of ground likes me enough not to purposely turn me into a dragon snack. Gurn hukatuin, Boulder. Slowly, he pulls me back until I'm flopped against the wall, still feeling like the world is rocking beneath my feet. Pesky, parasitical runes. I hack a strip of material from my cloak and use it to bind my hand, difficult with double vision and no feeling left in the frozen tips of my fingers. To take me back to the scorching plains of home, I bite out, then stash my blade and turn toward the obscure stairway that zigzags up the ridge, cuts left across the mountain's sheer face, then fringes the forest, the path a relic of times past, further smudged behind a battle of snow and wind. The world splits, converges, splits. I sigh. If I don't fall and break my neck, it'll be a miracle. With careful steps, I begin the treacherous traverse, moving across the cliff's face when the molten moss screeches so loud it rivals the howling wind. I spin, squinting. Through the eddy of snow, I see the beast stretching its massive feathered wings. With a few violent heaves, it lifts off the wall and propels toward the huge, spiky silhouette that crowns the mountain city. Windows a glittering contrast to the murky dim. The palace. My heart skips a beat. I wobble as the ground jolts, like something flicked at me from beneath. Quick, isolated, the sort of jolt I only get when Boulder's trying to tell me something. Frowning, I open myself. His song busts into my eardrums, a baritone lullaby, the melancholy tune almost reminding me of the tune he sang to Slotra when she was in the burrow at Dom. Burnt, broken. I spin, looking through the churning storm to where a cluster of ancient abandoned burrows are tucked amongst the mountain's ridges, one of which my lovely Carter is hidden within, waiting with her molten maw. Waiting to carry me back to the Fade. An uncomfortable feeling lodges in my chest, like I just got struck with an arrow. Cold, hungry dread. I lurch to my feet and run. My aching legs give way. I stumble, catch myself against a jagged rock and collapse into its meager shelter. Working to steady my breath, I ball my frozen hands against my mouth so they absorb my hot exhales. Finally sure I'm not about to pass out, I look toward the huge cave ahead, barely visible, were it not for the odd blade of moonlight now slitting through the clouds. I cut my mouth and make the whirring sound of a bundlebush bird. The sound amplifies off sharp edges before it's eventually swallowed up. And I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The world continues to split and sway as I pick apart the darkness, waiting. My insides twist into tighter knots with each passing moment. We agreed on 60 counts, that if there's no response, something's wrong. 54, 55. Come on, come on, come on. Hoot! I almost cry out with relief. Blowing a quiet prayer to the creators, I flip the lid on Khan's copper weald, using the small flame to light my way down the trembling burrow, barely dodging bits of falling rock. We need to get out of here, fast. I round a corner that opens into the large nesting chamber. Rasha? I whisper, stepping over pale branches and chunks of obsidian, the cave rumbling again. Shaking, almost like it's angry. There's a sharp crack, the only warning I get before a wedge of stone plummets before me, so close it almost crushes my toes. I stumble backward over a log and land on my tailbone, a jolt of pain lashing up my spine as Khan's weald skitters across the floor, though the flame continues to burn. What's Boulder's problem? I open myself. His song thumps into me with such vengeance I hiss a breath, his tone dense and guttural, a grinding mix of anger and sadness so unlike the sturdy god. The melody splinters through my skull, many of his words unfamiliar, abrupt and jagged. I press my hands against my head and attempt to stop my skull from cracking like an egg, then pause at the smell of blood, at the wetness smeared all over my left palm. Snatching Khan's weald, I wave it over the glossy red puddle on the ground, pushing up to get a better view of its large scope. Too large. Rasha? My voice cracks. I step through the blood and move deeper into the den, gasp as a huge shape comes into horrific, devastating view. Fern, Rasha's yellow and orange molten maw, suspended mid-air, pinned in place by shards of obsidian piercing her from all angles, like she tried to take flight at the first sniff of danger, but was immediately impaled through her chest. Wings, abdomen, neck. My heart unspools, veins, arteries, flesh stripping loose, until it feels like there's nothing left. I sway, looking at her head, hung at an unnatural angle, eyes wide, red pupils gone dim. Her beak is open, blood dripping from the forked tip of her tongue and splat, splat, splatting on the ground. The sight splits, converges again. I wonder if I'm seeing things, if the drain has taken me a nip too far, until someone speaks a series of seething words that raise the hackles on my soul. Just that exist fiake. The flame from Khan's weald erupts, burning my palm. I drop it, jolting back from the inferno as it surges skyward, gushing against the ceiling like a plume of dragon flame, igniting the chamber with such fiery ferocity that I'm forced to squint, using my hand as a meager shield to protect my face from the radiant heat. The hot, hungry light illuminates everything. Numerous thorns line the walls, long swords pointed toward the ground between their feet, their faces guarded by silver headgear, eyes gleaming like gems tossed in the firelight. Single beads dangle from their lobes, glinting like silent threats. Another command hisses through the cavern, spoken by a broad male more decorated than the others. I'm flayed by his cutthroat gaze as fire siphons down upon the beautiful broken fern, She ignites with such ferocity the chamber becomes a kiln, the air souring with the pungent fume of charred feathers and dragon flesh. Unable to watch, I look away, seeing Rasha bound and gagged, held in place between two hefty warriors more than twice her size, her big green eyes so wide with pain and fear that a coarse sound claws up my throat. Traitorous whore! A thorn seethes, jostling her. She barely manages a muffled scream before a blade punches through her throat from behind. Rasha! She chokes, blood staining her gag. My face twists, lips pulling back, neck muscles tightening as I pour all my rage into a single grinding command. Gurn ed Akina! Something strikes my left ankle. Balder abides by my command and collapses part of the ceiling, crushing 3 thorns. At the same time, I crumble, his song vanishing, washed away by the iron arrow that barely missed my Achilles. A pain that pales in comparison to the deep ache in my chest at the sight of Rasha being tossed to the ground like a doll. Limp. Dead. My surroundings become a burning smear. The thorns converge as one, a silver noose tightening on the fate of the precious diary bound against my abdomen, a relic that has the power to change everything. I grip the hilt of my dagger, looking between the armored soldiers, wondering which of them will grab me first, who will end up with my blade in their eye. I'd rather die than end up face to face with Tyroth, would rather burn beside Fern and Rasha so my soul can pass messages to Khan via his pet waif. My breath hitches as I glimpse a tight cleft in the wall that cuts off to the right, and certainly wasn't there before. That likely leads deeper into the mountain, but better than death. Quietly thanking Balder, I lift my leg and plant my good foot. Digging through the pocket of my cloak, I scour my approaching persecutors. Take a final look at poor Rasha on the ground at their backs, eyes wide and so heartbreakingly flat. Take a final look at Fern's skeletal remains, Ignos feeding on what's left of her feathers and flesh. You're all monsters, I snarl past the thickness in my throat. Pompous laughter erupts from all but the stolid commander, a sneering voice threatening to bend me over a rock for thinking I could sneak into my brother's kingdom undetected. My fingers close around the jar of moonlight while I hold the commander's cutting blue stare. I can't wait for the day you're forced to bow before the rightful queen and face your heinous crimes. A line digs between his pale brows. I toss the jar. It shatters, frosty light exploding as I snatch Khan's wield, then shove up and stagger blindly through the clamor.
Chapter 8. Rave. I stalk through puddles of red, littered with bits of flesh and bone, breathing metallic air tainted with the reek of excrement, one of Khan's dragon-scale blades twirling between my bloody fingers. With a spin, I toss the dagger, watch it thunk into the tattered remnants of Rex Zaros's flayed chest. He hangs there, stretched arms tethered to the pallet posts, head flopped forward, unmoving. Dead. Very dead. Hard not to be when your heart's no longer in your chest. Not that I've been able to locate said heart, something I've decided never to think about again. Unless my other threw it on the fire or perhaps tossed it out the window that overlooks the labyrinth of filthy streets below, doubtful, then I don't want to know. I also don't want to think about her, my other. Not with the memory of everything I just saw stuffed beneath the ice where it belongs, never to be touched again. I sigh, tip my head to the side, scour the mess my other made of Rek, leaving him utterly unrecognizable. Again, I hunt the visible parts of his skin, trying to find a segment that's not been burnt. Failing. What I wouldn't do to have watched her fold him up and stuff him in the fireplace. At least that's what I imagined she did to cause such damage, forcing him to experience the feel of his flesh melting, to live through the same sizzling torture Leary endured when he flew her too close to the sun. My gaze bounces from deep, gory gash to deep, gory gash, each wound likely made from Rek's own bloody boots tossed in the corner, the spokes covered in carrion. A creative flourish that went beyond even my own sadistic plans. Credit where credit's due. Never have I seen such brutal slaughtering. She avenged Leary and Essie so thoroughly, there's nothing left to work with. Only my flare of rage for the scars Leary will always carry, and the continued ache of Essie's absence. Because of him. I clear my throat and stride forward. Tuck the itchy tip of my finger beneath Rek's chin, push back his head, and look into the empty hollows of his mutilated eye sockets. No idea where his eyes went, either. Something else I don't want to think about. At least she made you suffer, I say past the annoying thickness in my throat, dropping my hand. His head flops forward. I sigh and yank out the blade, spin on my heel, then stalk back to my spot by the door and toss it. Thunk. Right between his non-existent eyes. I crack my neck, advancing again when someone pounds on the door. Password, I mutter, trying to wiggle the blade free. A long pause, a throat clear, followed by a whisper hiss.
Rek Zaros can eat a jar of sprangle shit.
I smile, finally free the blade and tuck it into the laden sheath strapped around my thigh, about to open the door when I realize I've been so caught up exercising my frustrations on Rek's corpse that I'm still covered in him, and not much else. Just a moment. Moving to the washroom, I kick off my heels and shed my lacy scraps of clothing, using a damp cloth to wipe off most of Rek's blood. I redress in leather pants and a soft black tunic that laces tight around my waist, then pull on my boots, stash them with blades, and rebuckle my sheaths. After donning my cloak, I dash a cloth over my shoulder and scoop the door handle from the sink, frowning when I notice a silver shimmer bound around my wrist. Almost incorporeal. Odd. I'm still studying it as I move toward the exit, slide the handle into place, and open the door. Welcome, I mumble, then yank a blade free and toss it backward, hearing another fleshy thunk. There's a definitive pause before my Carter clears his throat again.
I can come back, if you like.
I rip my gaze from the oddity, looking at Utris, arms crossed over his barrel chest. He scrubs at his thick black beard, a perfect match to his dark leathers and the tone of his skin, contrasting his bright blue eyes and ruddy molten maw feathers tethered to the end of his many beaded braids. Red and brown, Ignos and Boulder. My heart squeezes. Same as Khan. I blink. Huh?
The mail?
He says in his thick northern accent, brow lifting.
You finished with him, or?
I snatch another blade from where my other must have plunged it into the wall, flinging it through the air. It thumps into Rek's hollowed chest cavity, right where his heart should be. Unfortunately. All I wanted was to spend an entire cycle flaying Rek, chipping away at his ribs, then unraveling his intestines until he screamed for me to end it. Bit much to ask, apparently.
Right.
Utris dips his head, stepping farther into the suite. I boot the door shut, a parchment lark fluttering through the gap just in time to avoid being crushed. It waggles around, trying to regain its bearings before it darts in my direction. I pluck it from the air and tuck it in the pocket of my cloak, next to Khan's Malmer. Need I remind you that if you breathe a word of this to anyone, you'll find yourself without the extra bag of gold I stashed in Dome. hidden, its location on a pre-folded lark in my back pocket, ready to be released to him the moment we part ways. Not that he knows that. I'll probably slaughter you two. I shrug. Loose ends and all that.
Your secret's safe with me.
Utris casts an approving glance around the suite, then draws a dagger. He moves closer to the pallet and angles the blade against one of the tethers keeping Rex suspended, slicing the coil of fibers.
I witnessed this fuck spurring that poor moon plume across the plains.
He seethes, severing the bind. The right side of Rex's body flops down, now hanging by his left wrist.
Had I known how much you were going to make him pay, I would have offered my services for free.
Well. Utris slashes through the final tether, releasing Rek. His mutilated body thumps to the ground. I'll keep that in mind. One by one, Utris yanks my blades from Rek's body and slides them across the floor. I snatch them up, blindly wipe and stuff them in my sheaths, my attention again fixed on the obscure tendril of shimmer coiled around my wrist and tangled through my fingers. I try to wipe it away, but all that does is smear more blood up my arm.
You still want to feed him to the nth?
I look up to see Utris has already wrapped Rek in a black sheet, now binding him with a length of rope. No, I say, letting some of my bubbling bloodlust poison my tone. Truthfully, I want to leave him trussed in the street for everyone to see, then parade the city with his heart in my fist. Utris opens his mouth. But, I interject, snatching the cloth from where it's draped over my shoulder, using it to clean the blood off my hands. His heart is nowhere to be seen, hopefully mulched on the ground and not in a masticated heap in my guts. And unfortunately, I have too much self-preservation to attempt something so stupid. So let's get this over with. Did you manage to track down a shroud?
I did.
Utris wipes his bloody hands on the sheet. He flips open his satchel, reaches in, and pulls out what looks like nothing. At least until he shakes it out, offering a glimpse of the shroud's silver underside. He swaddles Rek in the heavily ruined material, casting him invisible, tucking it in place so it doesn't come loose. Wonderful. How much do I owe you?
The merchant wasn't interested in bloodstone.
He glances up, a wistful warmth in his eyes.
Or gold. In fact, it's quite possible I've met the love of my life this day. Either that, or she just wanted a quick fuck against the bookshelf.
Oh. Good for you, I intone, not wanting to think about loves of life. Of Khan's lips brushing against my temple back in the burrow at Dome, nor the final words he passed me.
Come back to me, Rave. To us.
I screw up the cloth and toss it at the wall, watching it slump into a puddle of blood. Such a beautiful, miraculous male. Such questionable taste in romantic life partners. If he could see me now, I'm certain he'd agree. The lark in my pocket wiggles free, dashing up to bop my nose, its wings and body covered in blood from my previous lark handling. I wince, catching it. Sorry. I pry the poor thing open, my heart stumbling over itself when I see the tiny script. Familiar. Beautiful. Cons.
Moonbeam.
I swallow, squeeze my eyes shut, open them again, my breath catching at the faintest hint of his creamy, robust scent still clinging to the parchment. I keep reading, eyes widening a little more with each barbed word.
A moonfall is coming. Our misguns foreseen a catastrophic event. Many will fall, and all at once. Though she's unsure when exactly it'll happen, she believes it's still a number of cycles away. Perhaps 17 to 20, based on the glimpse she caught of the aurora ribbons. I've opened the doors of the Imperial Fortress so my folk can take refuge deep within the mountain burrows, and have sent word to my village leaders to make preparations. I'm having Lyri escorted to our southernmost outpost, west of Bothame, by a trio of our most competent blue beads. Should you want to meet her there, you won't find the village on the map, but Utris knows its location. Rave, your safest bet is to be underground when the moons fall, at least until things settle, which could take a while. Ma's mountain retreat has a deep bunker beneath and is packed with provisions. The entrance can be found under the big rug in the living space. Don't be stubborn. Please use it. Others will soon foresee the moonfalls. Once word gets out, folk will panic. Things will get messy. Tell nobody, and please be careful. I'm here in B. Crossed out. Pinch the return fold if you need me. Yours. For a moment, all I can do is stare, breath caught, blood ice cold as I reread the same line over and over. Many will fall, and all at once. Creators. Everything okay?
My gaze snaps up, hand clamping shut like a shellfish, hiding the lark's jarring message. Tell nobody. I pull a long, slow breath to tame my rampant heartbeat, stuffing all concerns of the message away until they're merely a wisp of fog floating atop my icy lake. I lift my chin, straighten my shoulders. Perfectly fine, I lie, refolding the blood-stained parchment lark bar the final fold that gives it flight, not wanting it to flutter free of my pocket again. It's just my reckoning for renting every room in the snog. More than I thought. I flick up my hood and make for the door, jerking it wide. Shall we? Uhtred grunts with the heft of Rex's weight, shifting him into position on his shoulders until I can hardly tell he's carrying an invisible corpse.
After you.
I swipe the heels of my boots on the doormat partway down the empty stone hall when I hear the click of a weld opening. My steps speed to match the rhythm of my now thrashing heart. Uhtred speaks a series of too familiar words that sizzle my soul and make me want to vomit, turning his small flame into a raging inferno intended to gobble every drop of evidence within the suite. Just as we discussed prior to the messy slaughtering I wish I could take credit for. Despite the warmth that radiates down the hall, a shiver crawls up my spine. I hasten my steps, moving around the corner. Away. Though it's tempting to let Ignos feast on Rex so we can finish this in a quick and timely manner, a regular fire doesn't consume everything. It gorges on flesh, then spits out the bones and a screaming, thrashing soul, leaving the remains unpalatable to pretty much anything other than a desperate velvet trog. What I love about Bothame is that it sits atop many secrets, including a series of underground tunnels munched into existence by something long ago, now home to a fully grown anth. A creature that gorges on flesh, yes, but also swallows souls, nulling them into oblivion. Rex Zaros deserves nothing more. Once he's suitably swallowed, well, then I'll turn my concerns to the bloody lark in my pocket.
Chapter 9. Evea. I think I might have fucked up. Battling for breath, I look over my shoulder, down the jagged cleft I squeezed through to get here, wondering. The distant sound of boots pounding stone confirms going back is not an option. I should have peeled off earlier, down one of the other cracks in the wall. Swiping the sweat and tendrils of hair clinging to my brow, I take in the cavern stretched before me, scanning angry pools of magma that burp billows of smog. My gaze climbs the massive stone columns that support the broad ceiling, like Boulder himself is using his arms as pillars. It's a death trap. My gear isn't equipped to withstand such heat. And what if I get down there and the only way out is death by lava pool? A blow of air whips the powdery, sulfuric fumes into a violent dance, like Claude just gusted into the cavern, parting them like gauzy curtains. My gaze narrows on a slice of aurora light shafting through mottled clouds beyond. An exit. I deflate, muscles easing. Thank the creators. I study the labyrinth of frail paths that weave through the caustic carnage. Unfortunately, they appear as sturdy as my withering balance. Guess it's time to remove this iron bolt. Looking down at the poke of metal protruding from my foot, I wince, look back up again. Damn it, I mutter, sinking onto my ass with one leg dangling over the steep ridge. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I fill my lungs, hold my breath, then rip out the bolt, plugging my mouth with my fist so I don't scream. I toss the fucker, blood oozing from the gory puncture as Boulder Song hammers me like a drudging lament, as it always does when there's lava around. He doesn't enjoy being melted. We have that in common. I tear a strip from the hem of my cloak and bind my foot, about to beg Boulder to build me a bridge of salvation across the landscape of doom, when something catches my eye, tucked amongst chips of obsidian, something black, shiny, but suspiciously round and perfectly shaped. My heart stills. It looks like one of Baron's scales, Tyroth's massive, majestic, and very boisterous saber scythe. Surely not. Surely he's hutched in one of the outposts closer to the Fade, where there's at least a bit of warmth in the air. Nobody in their right mind would hutch a saber scythe here. In fucking Arithia. I look closer at the cavern, at the mounds of obsidian clustered in places, some scuffed into shards, like something's been using them to tend its overgrown claws, a behavior I've only seen in dragons kept in confined spaces for too long. Small silver runes are etched in the many crevices about the walls, around pools of lava, on islands of stone. Creators, this place is no accident, forged into existence by some volcanic anomaly. It's a brimstone cage. Again, I glance toward the distant exit, at the frail ridges woven between the volcanic pools. I can't call on Boulder to build me a bridge and risk rousing Baron, but potentially having my flesh melted off to get free of this place is a risk I'm willing to take. Sketching out the best, hopefully sturdiest path, I rip another strip from the hem of my cloak and bind the bottom half of my face so I don't choke on the fumes. I turn, edging down the craggy cliff, when a low rumble echoes from deep within the burrow. Fuck. I don't stop, don't even slow. It's been a long while since I last saw Baron, but I recall his broad stature and fierce territorial nature. Can't forget his heavily spiked tail he used to bludgeon anyone who stepped into his personal space, or the way he went through handlers like roast coal conches, back when he was hutched in Dom. If he emerges from wherever he's coiled up, I'm dead. Leaping the final few feet, I land in a crouch that sends a shaft of pain up my leg, unleashing a wild scream that echoes in the cavernous space. Panic pitches me into a hobbled run, the undersides of my boots threatening to stick to the hot stone as I weave down frail paths that crumble in my wake, dodging spits of lava bursting from brimstone pools. Thick exhaust clouds my vision, but I power forward. Claude, a gusty beacon, I hunt. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I scramble up a pile of loose obsidian fragments, drop to my ass, and slide down the other side, slicing my hands and arms on all the sharp edges. Pushing upright, I keep moving, coughing despite the bind, eyes stinging from the steam and sulfur-laden stench. Just down this hill, a quick dash to the burrow's mouth, then out. I can hide in the steep forest. Wild waifs are known for nesting amongst clusters of weeping wisps, but the risk of having my soul slurped is better than the alternative. Death. Losing custody of the diary. I leap onto more sturdy ground, sprinting toward the exit when another gust of wind shoves into the burrow and sweeps the smog aside, revealing Tyroth barring the way like a pewter armored statue. There's a cruel glint in his mismatched eyes, his hair loose, arms crossed and shrouded in the pelt of some white beast, with its lifeless head hanging over his left arm. My heart drops. His mouth moves. The ground shakes. A spear of obsidian strikes up diagonally from the ground. So fast I don't fully register it until it pierces my shoulder, shreds skin, muscle, and sinew, shatters bone. I feel it burst through my back as I jolt to a stop and scream. A loud, blood-curdling howl. Pain thrashes and pulsing heaves, like something just tore my arm clean off. I drop my chin, lungs aching for breath I can only sip or risk of breaking myself further, watching blood ooze down the black shard and puddle at its base. My brother's heavy footsteps thump closer, one thought belting through my mind. I can't fail, can't fail, can't fail. I still my trembling lips, forcing my lungs to fill with breath I drudge into words. Beg for Boulder to spear up and do to Tyroth what he just did to me. Girdeth oth an, girdeth oth achna, Tyroth bellows before I finish, wrestling my command into submission, something that almost rips my tongue from my throat, crumbling the shaft of stone that had begun to spear toward his chest. I gag and splutter, tasting blood, lungs burning. He steps through the remnants of my failed attempt to murder him, over a shattered chain of silver containment ruins, suggesting Tyroth's been keeping Baron trapped against his will. Leaving without saying hello, he drones, long hair billowing in the hot, humid wind. My very essence scrunches in. Just like with Pa, I always feel small in Tyroth's presence, the runt of the litter who didn't have the decency to die with Ma when I took her from the world. Why would I waste my breath? I ask, instead of telling him how much just looking at him hurts. His face that rarely smiles, condemning eyes that blame me after every blink. That's what mirrors are for. He clicks his tongue. Funny how you always see yourself as the victim, Vea, when you're the one who took everything from us. Stepping close enough that I can see the flecks of green in his left eye, he rips off the bind and frowns down his nose at me, studying my face like he's picking apart a painting. I hate how much you look like her. I wish I had the breath to tell him to get fucked. At least he knew her, saw her, smelled her. I didn't have her at all, and Pa burned all her portraits. Instead, I edge my hand into the folds of my cloak, gripping the blade strapped to my left thigh. I think he did too. His frown deepens. Probably the reason he didn't put you out of your misery when you begged for it. I ignore his riddled words and whip back my good arm, about to slash my blade through his throat, when my hand freezes mid-air. It takes a moment for me to register what Tyroth grunted out, and the thin spear of obsidian now impaling my raised hand. The blade clatters to the ground before the violent flare of pain strikes, warm blood glugging down my arm and drip, drip, dripping from the point of my elbow. Tydaroth clicks his tongue again. Tell me, sister, what are you doing in my kingdom? Seeing. With a sigh, he stuffs his hand in the pocket of my cloak. I forgot what a sarcastic cunt you are. He retrieves my bangle and waves it in my face. Have you recalled the last time you used this yet? I don't answer, can barely focus on anything beyond the ragged workings of my lungs. I'd take your silence as a no. He pockets the bangle, then pulls out a bronze dragon scale blade. My heart slams against my ribs at the sight of it, the shade familiar, the same tone as a saber scythe I watched heave into the sky and bind into a ball when I was only 5 faces old. Tydaroth grips a handful of my hair and yanks, jerking me against the spear of stone. I cry out, the blade glinting as he brings it close to my scalp and slices. I feel the strand sever, see the clump of curls fall away in his hand. Something to send as proof when I inform Khan of your death. I grow so cold one tap would shatter me. Tydaroth whistles, long and deep. The sound ricochets off the cavern's walls, followed by a gravelly rumble, like a boulder's gut just gurgled. Or at least that's what I tell myself, that Tydaroth's dragon didn't just rouse from a heavy slumber. I tremble anyway, certain I'd rather die by my own blade than be eaten or burned alive. You can keep your head, Tydaroth drawls, looking down at the small black pouch he's stuffing my hair into, tugging the drawstring tight. When he looks at me again, there's cold hate in his eyes. Spend your eternal existence hunting me from beyond, little sister. Watch me slaughter your favorite brother, then decimate the burn until it's nothing but rubble and bones. Payment for helping himself to what was mine. The last word is hissed with such vehemence, I realize one terrible, frightening thing. He knows. He found out about Khan and Elwyn. Does he know about Kaisari? That she's not his? The ground trembles in thumping increments. But first, a parting gift. He pockets the satchel and leans close, brows pinched as he studies me. I'll help to fill in your blanks with this trick I've been working to hone. He claps his hands over my ears. I jostle despite being skewered, trying to rip my head aside to avoid eye contact. Hold still, he growls, jerking me straight, using his fingers to pry back my lids. I'm not the best at this. One wrong move and I might strike something important, and that would spoil the whole reveal. I scream, not from the pain of being stuck through, but from the agonizing way he plows into my mind like a blunt spear. His pupils swell, my body loosens. All the color seems to dissipate from the world, leaving only 2 bold discs of black I plummet amongst. Distantly aware of my mental walls crumbling, the ones eternally standing guard around the most important parts of me. My guts threaten to turn inside out as he spears past my thoughts of the diary, of Khan, Kaisari, Elwyn. Instead, he narrows on a darkened corner I hadn't noticed was even there until he stabs it, brutally, as if he's trying to slay something he can't quite see the shape of. There's a painful pop, like he just pierced some sort of membrane. I gasp, jolting as a torrent of raging burden gushes out and burns through me like a caustic flood of poison, stuffing nooks and crannies I've been ignoring for over 100 phases. Casting me back. "Do you remember now?" Tyroth asks, his voice a grating echo as I'm kneeling on the ground in Pa's office. His young Miskan crouches on his desk, a shackle around her frail neck. Remorse glints in the creature's big silver eyes as Pa slams my bangle down, making Hulo flinch. But it's me he's looking at, me he's speaking to. "Tyroth's pairing was refused, so this is the only way. It's going to happen one way or another. But the Miskan foretold the world's end if the Navans die by any hand other than your own." It takes me a moment to realize he's telling the truth, for his words to sink in, for the tremble to start. "No," I say, soft beneath Pa's oppressive aura. My tongue hardens in synchrony with my stiffening spine. "No, you fucking monster. I'd rather die." I shove up and turn to stalk from the room, grabbed and held down by a brother I loathe, one who hates me as much as I hate him. I bash, kick, scream. I see Aruni ushered in, heart thrashing as I recognize Mior's short white hair, wide eyes, kind face, kind just like her paws, but pained, which can mean only one thing. I whimper, shake my head, try to shuffle back, only for Tyroth's grip to tighten so much I feel the budding promise of bruises around my upper arms and shoulders. My childhood friend kneels before me. Her brown skin is such a contrast to the white robe bunched around her petite form, a golden mind-weft button pride of place at the base of her throat. Despite the empathy in Mior's eyes, I'm too aware of the strain on her face, of the way she's trembling as much as me. I jerk against Tyroth's firm grip, catch a boot to the ribs I barely feel. My next words ground past a choked whimper. "Please, don't do this, Mior. Please. I have no choice." A tear slips down her cheek, mirroring my own. "I'll be gentle, I promise." A soft smile. Then, "I would never hurt you." My face crumbles, all the fight leaving my body as Mior settles her hands on my cheeks. Her chin wobbles, and in her beautiful eyes, I see her heart break. "Forgive me, Vea." I tip into those pools of blue ringed with gold, bits of me shedding free, like feathers torn out by the wind. Compassion flutters past. Gone. Empathy goes next. Sadness. Morality. I tumble until I'm a skeleton of stoic compliance, only a thread of thought to stitch me through. Mior leaves, tears on her cheeks I can't comprehend. Pa kneels in her place and grips my face, looking at me through stern eyes that used to hurt. "Now, daughter, what must you do?" My response is immediate. I must go to Arithia and poison the Navan family. "Except," Tyroth growls, staring at me with burning intensity. I blink, think. Elwyn rave Navan. Elwyn is to live. I hear myself whimper as I journey across the plains, into the dark, through a secret entrance in the wall that surrounds Arithia. Garbed in the skin of another, I move through the dark palace like a waif, smearing the blood of a Zatha beetle on the tooth scrubs of Adric Navan, of Eudora Navan, Hadion Navan. No! There's the sound of cracking stone. I fall to my knees, feel no pain despite the heaviness still wedged in my hand and chest. I'm almost back in Dom when my emotions sprout like bladed feathers, slitting me from the inside out. There's nothing but pain and chronic grief, my gut knotting as I think of. I scream for the carter to stop. He doesn't. I jump, fall, wake in Pa's office and beg him to cut my throat. He just stands there, arms crossed, watching me break apart on the ground. I reach for his blade. He kicks me in the belly so hard I vomit, ordering 2 guards to retrieve Mior. I see a pair of blue eyes ringed with gold. Tumble again, much faster this time. Further. Around me, things smudge so much that when I finally come to a stop, nothing looks right. There are pieces missing. I'm sure of it. Am I okay, Mior? Her smile doesn't reach her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek that almost reminds me of something. You are now, my friend. She takes my hand, holding it more gently than it's ever been held before. I've hidden it somewhere safe and quiet. It'll never hurt you again. There's the glint of something slashing through the air, the only warning I get before blood sprays my face, before Mior's head falls off her shoulders and tumbles across the ground. The world comes into focus, and I find myself shuddering on the ground, coiled amongst a scatter of bloody shards, bits of stone still stuck in me that I hardly feel. It was me. All this time, I thought it was Pa, but it was me. Tyroth steps away, the pebbling skin at the back of my neck telling me his dragon's nearly upon me. But it's hard to feel any fear as the newly recovered memories flay me from the inside, one precise slit at a time. I murdered them, took Elwyn's family from her, caused her to be torn from the shade, caused Slotra to chase her to the burn, and allowed Tyroth to infiltrate her kingdom. I turned her into an orphan. A groan dredges from my throat, like someone just grabbed a handful of my guts and ripped them free. Another. I groan until nothing's left, just a hollow ache that feels terminal. Tyroth spits beside me, mutters a barbed command. Zothen, Baron. Feast. I hear his retreating steps, forcing myself to look back over my shoulder, up into the eyes of the death I deserve. All the air escapes my lungs. The once majestic creature limps toward me, frayed wings loose at his sides, dragging through the magma with each hobbled step. He doesn't gleam in the molten light as he did. His scales gone matte, talons so long they almost curl in on themselves, making his movement slow. Pained. Again meeting Baron's dark eyes, I struggle to find a single ember. What's left of my heart breaks into tiny pieces. He destroyed you too. I drop my head, heaving breath while I wait for everything to stop, for the soul-splintering hurt to end. Please end. A cold breeze curls past the broken runes, planting an icy kiss on my cheek that I certainly don't deserve. All my breath knocks free as a warm claw closes around me, talons scraping stone as they pluck me from the ground, jolting me with a blaze of pain that has nothing on the flare eroding what's left of my heart. I wait to be brought toward Baron's mouth and tossed in, chewed on, wait to be dished the brutal punishment I've earned. Instead, he pulls deep whiffs of air. A moment of stillness, Then everything lurches forward in galloping increments before we launch. Plummet. Then we are no longer in the hot sulfuric air, but buffeted by clumps of snow and wind so cold, I'm half convinced I'm being scored across the sky like a bit of sketching coal. And perhaps I'd believe just that, were it not for the sound of beating wings. It takes me too long to realize we're flying north, toward the sun. Even longer to accept that Baron's not going to give me the death I crave.
Chapter 10. Khan. Grand Chancellor, I swear on my acolytes, Roan pleads, from the white stage beneath us all, the buffed surface gleaming like a moon-plume moon. He splays his shackled hands toward the many golden buttons securing his filthy, blood-stained Rooney robe. The book evaporated. I frown, gaze lifting from the proceedings to scan the murmuring crowd of witnesses. Perhaps 100 male Rooneys packed within the uppermost mezzanine, leering down, come to watch the persecution of one of their own. Evaporated? The Grand Chancellor echoes, tapping his sharp nails against the curved armrest of his white stone throne that looks like a dragon claw. Surely I misheard. He gestures about the chamber to the other 14 council members stationed around the ruling stage, perched on similar thrones of their own, all but one empty. Speak clearer, so my tri-beaded brothers can hear. Many of the members lean further forward, all shrouded in hooded robes of white. Most so aged, only their daily dose of bloodstone keeps their skin from looking like wrinkled parchment. But you can see it in their eyes, gone milky with age, in the way they move, slow, like they're built from heavier stuff than the rest of us. Roan clears his throat, raises his voice. You did not mishear, Grand Chancellor, and I swear to you this is no folly. He folds into a wobbly bow that shows the ladder of ribs protruding from his back, skeletal compared to when I saw him last, when he knocked on the door to my suite, asking if I had time to speak. After feasting, I'd said. But then I'd received a moon-shard lead, my first in over a phase. I was gone before the aurora set without a word of goodbye to anyone. Now, this. Roan's being trialed by my late pa's most powerful allies, tri-beaded males also gifted in the Rooney arts. My blood simmers as I consider how much this group of folk could positively influence the political sway of things, if they only put their minds to it. Instead, they believe the world is theirs by divine right to mold at their will, but the rest of us are livestock, quality marked. Bleat too loud and you get butchered. I've worked hard to keep the burn quiet and avoid political tangles since I took pa's crown. Wanted to give my folk a chance to heal, grow and thrive after everything they went through under Ostern's regimented rule, and the bloody usurping that followed. Seems peace is about to bleed dry, because there's nothing I wouldn't do for Roan. I made a promise to his sister, and on my honor, I will not break it. All it left behind was a cloud of silver particles that seemed to... Well, Roan winces, looking abashed. Prowl right out the door. You expect us to believe the Book of Void, the ancient artifact we firmly believe was written by Caelus himself, prowled free of the chamber? The Grand Chancellor presses, his blunt voice a hammer echoing off the amphitheatre's walls. A chamber which, he adds pointedly, is so heavily ruined against intruders that all have perished the moment they stepped foot over the threshold. Until now. Roan's cheeks redden, while Pyrock groans loud enough that one of the other Roonies gives him a side eye. I elbow him so hard he grunts. "I know how it sounds." Roan straightens his copper-framed spectacles, the perfect match to his floppy locks, matted and caked in grime. "I wouldn't believe it myself had I not seen it with my own eyes. But there I was, standing at the plinth, about to flip the cover after loosening the book's bind, and—" He flicks his hands, making the chains jingle. Poof! Gone! The council members turn their heads and convene, while the observers erupt with a swell of furious mutterings. Roan shifts, and I glimpse his bare feet. Shackles bind his ankles. Blood weeping from where they've bitten deep. I clench my fists. "The idiot's not kissing enough ass," Pyrock murmurs, digging into the pocket of his faux Rooney robe. He fishes out a copper flask and tosses back a glug. "He should be on his knees, begging for his life." The smell of burnt spirits wafts between us. They have no proof he stole the book, and the Tri-Council values knowledge and power above anything else. Roan achieved something remarkable. They want to know how. I glance at the mind-weft sitting at a desk beside the scribe, his unblinking gaze fixed on Roan, pupils dilated, perspiration beading off his brow. They're using this trial as a scare tactic. I hope. I notice the beads of sweat also dripping from Roan's bruised brow, curls of red hair plastered to his temples, a sign he's exhausted, struggling to maintain his mental void. So long as Roan doesn't challenge them, I say beneath my breath, we should be okay. I can break him from a cell. What I can't do is bring him back from the dead. There's not a force or power on our world that can revive a soul from the type of death the Tri-Council dishes out to those who ruffle their pristine robes. Pyrock grunts, taking another swig as a large shadow passes over the amphitheater. My gaze spears through the crystal ceiling, half expecting to see a moon plummeting toward us. Instead, a mature molten maw cuts through the patchy clouds, almost skimming close enough to slash one of the heavily runed white stone arches straddling the citadel from all angles, silencing the creators for everyone beneath except members of the Tri-Council, their brows adorned with diadems eerily similar to the one Kazari wears. The one Eloin used to wear before childbirth cruelly tore her away, ridding Kazari of the chance to know her, love her. The thought kneads my heart so hard it aches. "Silence!" The Grand Chancellor's booming voice hushes the crowd. Roan straightens, brows pinched as he looks up at the council members with a hopeful gleam in his bright green eyes. "Alchemist, given your solid mental walls, render our truth tunes useless at picking apart fact from fable. You put us in a difficult position. You want us to believe your absurd story, yet the fact remains that you were found in the chamber after breaking past the chain of runes that have been etched in place for eons, fashioned to protect the Book of Void." The Grand Chancellor gestures to the other council members, the wide cuffs of his sleeves dangling. "We unanimously believe you may have used one of your rogue Rooney techniques to hide the book, and that it's still currently in your possession." "That's a fucking stretch," Pyrock mutters beneath his breath. Roan's head kicks back as he frowns, and a sense of dread stomps me. He may be unmatched at mental voiding, but his face shows every emotion that passes through him, and I've seen this look before. When he's genuinely perplexed by the might of someone's stupidity. "With my greatest respect," he pushes his hands forward, to boast his shackles, iron etched in a band of runes. Given the many beatings I've endured since being tossed in the Citadel's dungeon, I would have used the book to find a way to free myself of these. I sigh. Everyone else gasps before the room erupts with bellows and gnashing chagrin.
Broken free? Go against the council? Did he expect to be coddled after he was caught stealing our most sacred artifact?
The Grand Chancellor hushes the crowd with a sweep of his hand.
For the record, what was the reason you broke into the chamber?
Roan frowns. I'm certain the reason is quite obvious, given my many written requests to cite the Book of Void's unrendered pages.
Ah, yes,
the Grand Chancellor lifts a flattened lark from the plinth beside him.
We received your firmly worded requests, but our lack of response was because, simply put, any unrendered pages were damaged from a time before the book was discovered and safely stowed away, and therefore undecipherable.
Roan screws up his mouth and shifts on his feet, enough that I can tell he's trying to distract himself from embarking on one of his conspiratorial outbursts, his gaze bouncing from chancellor to chancellor. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't.
In that case, surely there was no problem with me citing them as requested, he responds,
and I almost sigh with relief.
Unless, of course, the Tri-Council has been cloistering knowledge. Fuck. Blasphemy!
The Grand Chancellor's hands bunch into fists.
We would never!
Then what about those? Roan looks skyward, brow raised, a very pointed stare at the arches of stone that bridle the citadel. He shrugs. I try not to make a habit of believing